It's the amazing Rico Brogna podcast with your host, Evan Roberts.
Hi there. How the hell are we? Welcome to another edition of Rico Brogna. The Mets decide to kick us in the balls one more time down in Philadelphia as they lose the finale of this three-game series against the Phillies. They lose a rubber game. The Mets have been great in rubber games this entire season, but not on this Sunday afternoon. David Peterson was brilliant. The offense was not. Edwin Diaz throws a freaking fastball right down the middle to JT Realmuto. See you later. Mets lose to the Philadelphia Phillies. There's a lot to get to. First of all, the Arizona Diamondbacks did win. They won a crazy game against the Brewers. For some reason, Devin Williams warmed up 15 times, and the Brewers never went to him to protect the lead in the 10th inning. No idea what's going on there, but that pissed me off. The San Diego Padres won again. The San Francisco Giants did nothing. Nothing for us. And the LA Dodgers, a franchise that I think we all despise, did nothing for us on Friday, did nothing for us on Saturday, made us really sweat it out on Sunday when they were behind 2-0. But the Dodgers came back. They tied the game. They exploded in the 9th inning. Mookie Betts got the game-winning hit. And because of that LA Dodger victory, despite the fact the Mets lose these back-to-back brutal games, the Mets and the Braves remain tied for that third and final wild card spot. The Mets remain, or now are, 3 games behind San Diego in the loss column, 2 games behind Arizona, so still within striking distance. But obviously on Sunday, the Mets lost ground. Before we get to the game, before we break down Mendy's decisions, the offense doing nothing, let's start with Lindor. That is the headline. That is the most important thing right now. On Sunday, very busy sports day, I kept refreshing to see, is Lindor going to play? Is Lindor going to play? Big game, rubber game, Phillies. We all know what happened Saturday. Maybe him not playing on Saturday and being pulled out on Friday night, maybe that kind of day and a half would be enough for Lindor to give this a try. And when I saw him in the lineup, I was relieved. I think we all were. When Lindor starts the game by blooping a little dunker in the center field, even though he very gingerly ran to first base, again, a lot of relief. Here's Lindor, only 1 game missed, starts off with a base hit. Unfortunately, the Met offense did nothing because Christopher Sanchez struck out 3 guys in a row. But okay, I started to forget about Francisco Lindor's back. Just figured, you know what? He's playing injured, but he already gave you a little production early on. He fields that grounder from Trey Turner in the bottom of the first inning. And that was, I guess, the second warning sign, but the one that started to jump out at me of how compromised Lindor was. Ground ball to shortstop, was with 1 out and nobody on. And he makes this awkward and bad throw to first base. Luckily, Pete Alonso, very nifty around first base lately, makes the play. No harm, no foul, 2 outs and nobody on. And I think to myself, oh, geez, he does look compromised. He doesn't look, on these small little minor kind of examples, running to first base after a base hit, not trying to steal second, where maybe you do try to steal second base, especially once Nimmo was behind in the count 0-2 with 2 outs. Seemed like a good spot. Let me try to swipe second base. And then the awkwardness of the throw to first. We got early hints that this is not a 100% Lindor. We talked about this yesterday. Him playing is one thing. Him playing like the MVP and not being compromised is another. But what I did not expect, despite those 2 little warning signs, was for him to come out of the game as quickly as he did. And when I saw Luis Angel Acuna out at shortstop, when SNY showed us that, I'm sure we all have the same feeling, which is this dropped stomach. You got to be freaking kidding me. This is far worse than we expected. I sat here. We did a Rico after that great win Friday night, which now I'm going to live to regret, in which I was confident, in which I was like, you know what? You're being extra cautious. Mets have a big lead. Let's not get nuts. And now you look at the way this weekend played out with him. How can you not be worried? I almost don't expect him to play in the Washington series. He was asked after the game, and he was the one that brought up, I'm going to go for imaging. He's the one that brought it up and said, yeah, we're going to check this out and see if there's anything serious. With that said, let's see what the imaging says. If it says nothing and everything's clean, then it's going to be kind of like what we saw the last 2 days where he'll do a lot of stretching, he'll warm up, they'll make a decision every single day. And then even when he plays, you're going to worry, is he going to get through 9 innings? Now, God forbid the imaging comes back bad. Look, I want to make the playoffs. We all want to make the playoffs. You can't F around with the dude's health. As much as that sucks at this part of the season. He is signed for 1 million more years. We all remember what ended up happening to David Wright. It essentially ruined his career. And not just David Wright. There have been other players where back issues have really affected them. Edgardo Alfonso. I mean, one of the reasons why the Mets didn't keep Edgardo Alfonso was the worries about his back. I think he had like one decent year with San Francisco, and it all came crashing down. So the Mets are going to have to balance, and we too as fans are going to have to balance how important he is to this team, how much we want him in the lineup, how important he is, but also realizing they cannot put his future health in jeopardy. I already started thinking about the IL, and I know that sounds nuts. Maybe if you're listening, like, how the hell could he go on the IL? If he went on the injured list tomorrow, okay, so it would obviously be starting on Monday, he would be eligible to come back for the final game between the Mets and the Braves in Atlanta and for the final 4 games of the regular season. That would mean missing 3 games against Washington, 4 games against Philadelphia, and the first 2 games against Atlanta. It's not ideal. I'm just thinking about it because I don't know, with the Mets not having an off day for another week, if this is sustainable. I mean, is it realistic to think he's going to be able to play on Monday against Washington, even Tuesday against Washington? I guess they could try to sit him for a couple of days. And that's not to be arrogant about the Nationals. The Nationals have talent. We know the Mets have struggled against mediocre to bad teams forever. So it's not sit him because it's the Nationals. They should win anyway. It's sit him so that maybe he can get healthy. Maybe 2 days on the bench or 3 days on the bench will actually get Francisco Lindor feeling he's never going to be 100%, but at least well enough to play 9 innings. The other thing Lindor revealed in that post-game discussion was that this back issue didn't start on Friday night. Him going into second base, standing up, did not start the back issue. Fouling the ball off of his foot. Remember when we all thought it was a freaking foot issue because of that foul ball? That did not start this. Basically, Lindor admitted he's been dealing with this for weeks, maybe even months. Obviously, it didn't affect him. The guy's been having an MVP season, but this is kind of the rigors of a baseball season, right? You play every single day. You beat up. You play through injuries. I think Tiki's even said it. There's a difference between being injured and being hurt. Obviously, we have now gotten to the point where even though none of us knew about this Lindor injury, it is now affecting him where he can't be out there every single day. And it's a big problem. It's a big problem because this offense has done dick now for a couple of weeks, and he's the one that carries them. So things are going to have to dramatically change. Dramatically. And they didn't change on Sunday. They didn't at all. Because David Peterson was awesome. David Peterson bounced back in such an incredible way from his worst start of the year against Toronto, against a good Philly team. David Peterson, you could argue, was at his best. Pitches a 1-2-3 first inning, gets through a little bit of trouble in the second, even when Luis Torrens commits a pass ball. 1-2-3 third, gets through a 1-out walk in the fourth. 1-2-3 fifth, gets through after giving up a 2-out double to Trey Turner in the sixth inning. Pitches a 1-2-3 seventh inning. He was unbelievable. And I want to get right to that eighth inning because here's what I'm thinking. As Carlos Mendoza allowed him to come out to pitch the eighth inning with a pitch count of 86 and with a newly minted 1-0 lead because Tyrone Taylor hit a home run a previous inning. And we'll get to the offense in a second. But let me start with Peterson, and let me start with Mendy's decision-making. I had no problem. In fact, forget no problem. I was thrilled that David Peterson was allowed to start the eighth inning. Thrilled. His pitch count is relatively low. He is showing no signs of wearing down. He just pitched a 1-2-3 inning, and he did it against Castellanos, against Alec Bohm, and against JT Realmuto. He also got a huge ground out of Bryce Harper after giving up a double to Trey Turner, a move I didn't even agree with, because once he gave up that double to Turner in the 6th inning, Bryce Harper was 0 for 1 with a walk, but he hit the 2 home runs on Saturday. I don't want to face him. F lefty. I think that's overthinking it sometimes. I would rather face Nick Castellanos, who had struck out in his previous at-bat, who is not the threat that Bryce Harper is. I don't want to face him with a base open. Now, I admit Mendy and David Peterson ended up making the right decision, or at least it worked out. He got the first pitch ground out to second base. But I want to give you my honest thought at that time. Base open, Bryce Harper at the plate. I talked about it yesterday. I feel like if you let Bryce get hot, he can go on a crazy run. He went 110 plate appearances, whatever it was, without hitting a home run. He hits 2 yesterday. I don't want to mess with it. So to me, did not want to face him. They actually have a phrase for this now. When you don't want to face somebody, they call it pulling a coal. I wanted to pull a coal. I wanted to be cowardly too. I didn't want to face Bryce Harper, but luckily, to the credit of David Peterson and to the credit of Carlos Mendoza, I guess, they faced Bryce Harper. They got him out. But in the 8th inning, let me walk you through how I would have handled things. And I thought Mendy was doing the same damn thing. I thought I was on another planet. You allow Peterson against Weston Wilson in the 8th inning to face the leadoff hitter. Because remember, it's Weston Wilson, it's Buddy Kennedy, and it's Johan Rojas. It's the bottom of the Phillies order who went a combined 0 for 6 against David Peterson in the first part of this game. Once he gives up a ringing double to Weston Wilson, the alarm bells are off. And that is where I say, thank you, David. I appreciate the effort. Now I'm going to the bullpen. And I'm not just going to the bullpen. I'm going to Edwin Diaz. I'm not messing around. I mentioned yesterday on the Rico, I would have aggressively used him in the 7th inning in game 2 of this series. It's not crazy. If you're listening right now and you say that's ridiculous, it's not ridiculous. It's using your best pitcher, your best relief pitcher, in the most important part of the game. Obviously, Mendy didn't even consider that. But in this game, he had Diaz warming up in the 8th. So ask yourself a question, because I asked this question. If you have Diaz warming up in the 8th inning, what is he warming up for? Is there only a certain amount of outs he's allowed to get? Or will you go to him as soon as you say, hey, I'm in trouble, let me go to Edwin Diaz? When he gives up a leadoff double to Weston Wilson, who doesn't even sound like a real human being, it sounds like a law firm, go to Diaz. That was my thought. This is me first guessing as this game is going on. I absolutely allowed David Peterson to start the 8th inning. I have no problem with that. I'll fight with people who disagree. In fact, I got some emails concerning that. So you know what? I'll fight with you through the email. Ready for that one? I'll do it. This game is on Mendoza. This is from Brad Cantor. This game is all on Mendoza. I'm sorry, Evan. Why the hell are you sorry to me? It's like Brad Cantor knew I was going to defend at least a part of what Mendoza did, because all I'm defending is the part of Peterson being allowed to start the 8th inning. Once he gives up the double, I get his ass out the game. Mendy let him face 3 more batters. But I appreciate you saying you're sorry, Brad. Where do I start? The Mets should have won this game and will need to win games like this in order to make the postseason, let alone do anything in October. I'm upset right now, but I'm not surprised. I was discussing with my Mets group chat what the Mets should do in terms of pitching and pen management starting in the 6th inning, and we all agreed Mendy needed to have a short leash with Peterson. He looked good in the 6th, fine. Have a quick plan for the 7th. He had a nice 7th and relatively low pitch count. End his day there. You have a totally fresh pen. Throw in Maton to start the 8th. Throw in Diaz for 6 outs. Hell, see if Budo can do something special. What you can't do is not have a plan. He had no one ready. Peterson hadn't give up hard hit contact all day and then get shelled for 2 doubles in a row. You need to have a fresh arm throwing gas in the 8th. 1 double, fine. Nice day, Pete. Hit the showers. We got you. But to keep him out there with a runner in scoring position, indefensible. The pen has been better and mostly has responded. Let them earn their paychecks. Maton looked good, but he could have had a quick inning if he started the inning. Instead, we have a tie game. Instead, we have a rocked confidence Diaz going against the top of the order. Why is his confidence rocked? He only trusts his fastball. Did you see his sliders? They didn't break. He located them to Bohm, which was lucky, but there was no break. Why was there no break? No sticky stuff? He doesn't trust his slider without sticky stuff and relied on his fastball. All right. I'll get to the Diaz stuff in a second. I am with you on the double part. Once Wilson gives up the double, and here's what I'm trying to remember. I saw Diaz warming up like after Wilson gave up the double. So I'm not sure when he started throwing. It's one of the problems of watching a game on TV when you're at a game. If you've got a view of the bullpen, I guess, you kind of glance over and see when a guy is warming up. But I saw Edwin throwing like we all did. I think it was right after the Wilson double. That's when he's got to come out of the game. That's when you make the decision. All right, that's an alarm bell. He just gave up a ringing double to Weston Wilson. So that's the part where I'll agree with you. I make the move, and I don't make it to Phil Maton, and I don't make it to Jose Budo. I make it to Edwin Diaz. Runner on second, nobody out, trying to protect a one-run lead. And I worry about the ninth inning if I even get to the ninth inning. So does it have to be a 6-out save? Maybe it is. Maybe Edwin Diaz barely breaks a sweat in getting 3 outs. I don't know. But the point is you worry about that when you get there. I do agree. Mendy keeping him in the face, Buddy Kennedy, I didn't like it. And Buddy Kennedy, of course, comes through with a 2-2 double into the left field corner. And then he keeps him in to face Johan Rojas, I guess figuring that Rojas is such a lock to bunt. So I may as well keep Peterson in the game, though that almost backfired because Rojas laid down a good bunt. Peterson made the throw and barely got him at first. Iglesias made another good play in which we could have had a Cliff Floyd situation. For those that don't remember, years and years ago, before Cliff was a Met, Todd Hundley ran into Cliff Floyd. Floyd was a first baseman back in the day with the Montreal Expos, and he shattered his arm. It was one of the most sick feelings I've ever heard at Chase Stadium because Cliff was just screaming in pain. So luckily, Iglesias was fine on those 2 bunt opportunities over the last couple of days, but then he keeps him in to face Schwarber. And I know it worked because with a runner on third and 1 out and the infield in, he got Schwarber to ground out. It worked. I hated it. It worked. I didn't love it. And then after that, that's when Mendy finally says, all right, David, all right, Petey, we've had enough. We're going to go to Phil Maton. And he goes to Phil Maton. I would have gone Edwin Diaz against Trey Turner. Now, eventually we saw Edwin Diaz, and we know how that worked out. So that's my disagreement on how I would have managed the 8th inning. I would have had Peterson started. As soon as he gives up the double, I go to Edwin Diaz. How does that work out? Who the hell knows? Edwin Diaz is not the guy from 2 years ago. Now, he's had his good moments, but as we saw in this game, as we saw a few weeks ago in Arizona, as we saw in San Diego, he will mix in these kinds of disasters. I disagree with that last part of the email that his confidence is gone. I think Edwin, so I don't know if it's lack of confidence in his slider more than it was a real confidence in his fastball. The problem is if you're going to throw your fastball ahead of the count 0-2, you can't make it that down the middle. Like if you're going to try to throw a high fastball 0-2, it's got to be at JT Realmuto's eyes. So his command on that was way off. First of all, I wouldn't have thrown that pitch. 0-2, bounce a slider. Maybe Realmuto chases it. So I don't think I would have agreed on throwing a fastball, but you can't throw an 0-2 fastball. That's right there. Now, as far as Diaz is concerned, he comes into a tie game in the 9th inning. I love that. I think most of us would agree. At that point, you have to find a way to keep that game tied, especially against Harper, Castellanos, Bohm, Realmuto. You got to put your best reliever out there. Even after Maton got Trey Turner to fly out. Strikes out Bryce Harper, which was impressive. Gets ahead of Castellanos 1-2, gives up a base hit. Strikes out Bohm and gives up a stolen base, which was an underrated killer moment because who the hell saw Nick Castellanos stealing second base on that 2-2 pitch or that 1-2 pitch? But again, Edwin Diaz goes nothing but fastballs. He's ahead of Realmuto 0-2. And if you are throwing a high fastball, has got to be a lot higher than that. As far as intentionally walking Realmuto is concerned, yes and yes. Yes, I would have. It was the same thing with the Bryce Harper at bat. Similar, I guess not exactly the same, but some similarities. In the Harper at bat, it was, I feel Bryce Harper's about to get hot, though that didn't necessarily happen in this game. He went 0 for 3 with a walk, but the 2 home runs yesterday really scared me. I got a base open, and I have a lesser hitter coming up next. Let me go after the lesser hitter. In this case, it's JT Realmuto versus Weston Wilson, who I know got the double, but also may not even get the at-bat there. They may go a lefty and go Brandon Marsh or Bryson Stott. I almost assume it was going to be one of those left-handers, and I don't have a problem with that. Like, I still would have walked him. Because think about this. JT Realmuto has been clutch. JT Realmuto is a guy that not necessarily you're afraid of, but a guy that you'd rather not let beat you. Let's force Rob Thompson to make a decision. Let's force him. Let's force him to either take a guy who's been sitting on the bench all day in Brandon Marsh or Bryson Stott, or let him keep Weston Wilson in the game. And let me assume that Edwin Diaz has a better chance to get Weston Wilson out than JT Realmuto. So I would have walked him, but I turn out not to be as angry about that as I am about the fact that he was ahead of him 0-2. Like, that's the worst kind of game-ending moment. When you're a strike away, you've got your best reliever on the mound, and you can waste a pitch. You can bounce a slider. You can throw a fastball out his eyes. Instead, and you saw Alvarez right before the pitch kind of standing up, trying to go Diaz in a up, and it wasn't up enough. And it was just horrible execution. And yeah, he threw a million fastballs, but it was working early on. It worked against Bryce Harper. It worked against Alec Bohm. It did not work on an 0-2 pitch to JT Realmuto. Now, with all of that said, David Peterson, the decision to take him out, the use of Diaz, intentionally walking this guy or that guy, let's get down to business. This freaking team needs to hit. I mean, isn't that the bottom line? That was the bottom line from game 2 of this series, where they scored a bunch of runs early and then went limp dick for the rest of the game. This offense needs to step up. Pete Alonso, Brandon Nimmo, J.D. Martin, everybody needs to step up. And, Alonso's going to be the guy that we all point at because he's the slugger, because he's the star with Lindor out. Pete didn't have a bad offensive game. 1-out single in the 4th inning. 1-out single in the 4th inning. It's not his fault Brandon Nimmo weakly grounded out. It's not his fault J.D. Martinez flied out to center field. 7th inning, or I should say 8th inning, 2-out infield hit on a ball that I thought was going to sneak through and give the Mets the second run. He comes up with a runner on second, 2 outs after Acuna and Vientos struck out, and that's on them, by the way. They came up in a spot after the Taylor home run to add an insurance run, which we all knew was huge. We all knew they weren't winning this game 1-0. That second run basically became the game. And Alonso hit that little blooper that got past Buddy Kennedy, except he knocked it down just enough where it didn't go into right field and it didn't allow Bader to score. So I think the only knock on Pete is, yeah, you had 2 base hits, including a base hit with a runner in scoring position. But I think the rip is hit the ball over the fence, right? That's what we're at with him. And by the way, I don't even disagree with that. I'm just being fair that it's not as if Pete went 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts. It's not as if he has no chance at the plate. He's had good at-bats, but he hasn't had the powerful, impactful at-bats that right now, especially with Lindor out, they freaking need. They need slugger Pete Alonso, not 2 for 4 infield hit Pete Alonso. So again, he isn't a disaster. He's not striking out awfully in every at-bat, but they need more. J.D. Martinez, he did go 0 for 4. They need more. He's had a very subpar year. I know it's tough to kind of gauge how important he is with the younger players and the advice he gives, but they need J.D. Martinez. He came up with a runner on second in the fourth inning, and he flew out to center field. He's done nothing. He came up in the ninth inning. Chance to give the Mets a quick lead or regain the lead in the ninth inning against Jose Ruiz. They weren't even facing Jose Alvarado. They weren't even facing Jeff Hoffman. They weren't even facing the best end of the Philadelphia bullpen. And he did nothing. Brandon Nimmo, 1 for 4. I mean, really, the only guy you could compliment is Tyrone Taylor, who shockingly hit the home run in the eighth inning off of Christopher Sanchez. But the offense did nothing, and the offense has got to step up. This needs to be the strength of the team. And this offensive malaise, it's been going on for weeks now. For weeks, this has been a problem. They get no hit for 5 or 6 innings. They'll have one inning where something big happens. I'll give them that. They'll have that one big inning. But they go so many innings at a time doing absolutely nothing. Mark Vientos had probably his worst game as a major leaguer, taking the golden sombrero. 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts, 3 of them against Christopher Sanchez, the other one against Kerkering. Just an awful performance, and it's got to change. It's got to change against the Nationals. It's got to change with these 4 games they have against the Phillies again. And obviously, it's got to change in a week and a half when they have a chance to exercise the demons in Atlanta against the Braves. Luckily, they are still tied. I said, I think it was about a month ago, I would sign to be 1 game behind Atlanta going into that 3-game series. And as the Mets begin this stretch of baseball with 7 games at home, 3 against Washington, 4 against Philadelphia, and Atlanta, by the way, plays Cincinnati and Miami. So they are facing, outside of the Nationals, the Mets are facing 4 against the Phillies. The Braves are facing far inferior opponents. And so I think the same thing. I'm glad they're tied right now, but I think I would sign to be 1 game out because it can be worse than that. It's on the table that it's going to be worse than that. When you look at who Atlanta's facing, when you look at the fact that you just know, I know they have 1 more against LA, so it's 1 LA, 3 Cincy, 3 Miami. What are they doing in those 7 games? 5-2, 6-1? I almost assume they're going 6-1. And what are the Mets doing in these 7 games? Is 4-3 enough? Is that acceptable? I don't think that's enough right now, especially looking at who Atlanta's playing and looking at who Arizona's playing. The Diamondbacks are about to take on the Colorado Rockies. And the fact that the Mets still need to make up 3 games on San Diego and 2 games on Arizona. So the Braves are the realistic target. I mean, they're all realistic, but I guess the most realistic target, knowing you've got the head-to-head and you're even with them. But what do they need in these 7 games? What would you take in these 7 games? Like, honestly, a split against the Philadelphia Phillies and all 3 against Washington. If you can do that and you're 5-2 on this homestand by beating the crap out of the Nationals, not having any kind of fall down against a mediocre team, and then earning a split against Philadelphia, I would be thrilled with that. That's where I'm at. You can go 5-2, and look, you get to 5-2, no matter how you get to 5-2, I think I'd be thrilled. Sometimes it's how you get there. Honestly, they win the next 5 and lose the last 2, I'd still be thrilled at 5-2 because I'd still be thrilled they got the split against Philly and they won all 3 against Washington. Do I think they're going to do that? I don't know, man. This team has showed a lot of fight all year, and they deserve a lot of credit for the fact that they've responded to a lot of adversity. This is a big one, though. Blowing games in the 9th inning is one thing. Not having your MVP, and they're not going to have him. I mean, he's not playing Monday. Does anybody actually think Francisco Lindor is going to play a full 9 innings on Monday? And by the way, it may not even be smart for him to play a full 9 innings on Monday. Like at this rate, without knowing what the MRI is going to say, and hopefully it says nothing. Hopefully it says everything's fine, and he just has to kind of deal with whatever pain he's dealing with. But even if the MRI is clean, he should probably sit a few days just to make sure you have him healthy going into the series against Philadelphia, but more importantly, the series against Atlanta. And that's where everybody from top to bottom, from Starling Marte, who's hopefully okay. Luckily, the MRI on him came back clean, and Mendy wanted to give him a rest day. We'll find out if he's in the lineup on Monday against Washington. But from top to bottom, Brandon Nimmo, Pete Alonso, J.D. Martinez. I don't know what to expect from Luis Angel Acuna. He had a really good major league debut with some quality at-bats. But, I mean, what can we really expect from him? Yeah, made a really good defensive play on Sunday. Kudos for that. But I'm talking about the offense right now. Harrison Bader, Tyrone Taylor, Jesse Winker, who had a terrible at-bat and ended up getting ejected from the game. Even though it was meaningless, he wasn't staying in the game anyway. Francisco Alvarez, maybe building off of the mini hot streak he put together, but they got a hit. Watching this kind of baseball, now I love pitching duels, but watching this offense continue to falter day after day when they waste brilliant starting pitching. That's the worst part. Wasting it. I mean, David Peterson was unbelievable. And I feel like I haven't even given him enough credit. Like, we're not going to talk enough about him because we're too busy bitching about how this offense did nothing. So game one of this series against Washington is Jake Irvin against Sean Manaea. We know how good Sean Manaea has been. They owe Jake Irvin. I know they ended up hitting Jake Irvin pretty well after he had that July 4th game. They still owe him for July 4th. Jesse Winker owes the Washington Nationals too. They got Mitchell Parker in game 2 of this series. That's a lefty. With Tyler McGill pitching Tuesday, which I don't agree with. I'll get to that in a minute. And then another lefty, DJ Hers against Jose Quintana on Wednesday. So they're facing 2 lefties in this series against Washington. What does that mean? It means Jesse Winker's only going to play once. It means Tyrone Taylor, based on the home run he hit yesterday or today or whenever the hell you're listening, he deserves an at-bat. Now, also looking ahead, Ranger Suarez, a guy the Mets missed in this 3-game series, is pitching tomorrow for Philadelphia, which means they're going to get him on Saturday. So they'll see Suarez in the Philly series. And Zach Wheeler, who they also missed, is pitching Tuesday, which means the Mets are going to face him on Sunday. So they will get Ranger Suarez. They will get Zach Wheeler at the back end of that 4-game series over the weekend. That means Sunday Night Baseball is going to be Zach Wheeler. So here's my issue with the way this rotation is lined up. Sean Manaea pitching Monday, fantastic. Got no issue with that. That means he's on his day. It means he will come back and pitch Saturday against Ranger Suarez in the Philadelphia Phillies. Tyler McGill pitching on Tuesday, that's the issue. Because Tyler McGill is now in line to pitch Sunday against the Philadelphia Phillies. Which, I don't think any of us want to see that. Do we really want to see that? Not entirely. So Jose Quintana is then on line to pitch Wednesday, which means Quintana now is in line to pitch the opener of the Atlanta series, unless they skip him. Because the idea would be you would have Severino, you would have Peterson, and you would have Manaea in the series against Atlanta. I don't know how that's going to happen now because Quintana is going to pitch on Wednesday. And that means his next day would be on Monday, but there is no game Monday, which means he pitches on Tuesday. So I'll be very curious to see how Carlos Mendoza manipulates that, if he does manipulate it. Look, Quintana's been so great lately. Maybe the idea is he will pitch in the Atlanta series. We'll see. He's put together 4 great starts, but I still look at Severino, Manaea, and Peterson as the 3 guys you definitely want out there in this Atlanta series. And I don't want to thank the Dodgers for winning on Sunday night because, quite frankly, I wanted more from them. I expect more from the LA Dodgers. Now, let me get to some of your emails. The RicoB@gmail.com. Jordan writes, not dead yet. Yeah, let's get some positivity in there. Yes, Saturday and Sunday totally sucked, but the Braves lost, so we remain tied. If Lindor is going to miss a few days, would you consider putting Brandon Nimmo back in the leadoff spot and utilize his ability to get on base? Also, they'll need to keep Winker Marte when available bat in the lineup and cannot afford having both Taylor and Bader at the bottom of the lineup along with a raw Acuna. Hoping for the best, you got to believe. His lineup would be Nimmo, Iglesias, Vientos, Alonso, Winker, JD, Alvarez, Bader, Acuna. So I actually like Iglesias leading off. I do. I like that. They did that the other day in the lineup where Lindor was out. They had Iglesias leading off. Let me read what it was because I forgot already. Yeah, it was Iglesias, Vientos, Nimmo, Alonso, JD, Marte. I like that one. I do. I don't think I want to move Nimmo back to the leadoff spot. So as long as Lindor is out, that's exactly what I would do. Eric writes, Cadillacing right flashbacks, your Mets sign slogan. Evan, not like this. I can't believe that the 2024 Mets season is on the brink of death because at the peak of its momentum, the heart of the team, our indispensable MVP, who plays almost every inning, every game, got caught Cadillacing in a second base and jammed his back. It's clear now that Lindor's back injury is severe enough that he should be on the IL. Hearing about the extensive treatments and exercises he was doing yesterday and today to try to play gave me flashbacks to the end of David Wright's career. As much as I want Lindor to play hurt to win the wild card, the Mets of all teams need to treat a back injury and their 30-year-old captain on a long-term contract with utmost care and caution. I've meant to ask you for a while, but what does the slogan say under your light up Mets sign? It's a great point. I actually don't know the answer. I'm going to turn around and look at my light up Mets sign and see. It says TSLLC MLBP. So I know that last part is MLB Players Association or MLBP, Major League Baseball Players. TSLLC. I have no idea. I really don't know. I'll tell you where I got it, though. My dad is a CPA. He still does it. Takes on a lot less clients, but back in the day, had a lot of clients as a CPA. And I think one of the bar owners of a bar that he was the CPA for gave it to him. And he has a lot of crap, and then he gave it to me. So it's a hand-me-down. It is the truth. So I am choosing, and maybe this is my own issue. Maybe it's a good thing I'm doing this. Maybe it's good for my mental health. I am choosing to not connect Francisco Lindor's back issue, which could very well kill the season, certainly on the table, with Cadillacing in a second base. I am going to believe Lindor when he talks about it being an injury he's had all year, that he's had to deal with all year, and the rigors of baseball got to him. I don't know if I can think to myself, boy, he got lazy and he Cadillaced in a second and he didn't slide, and that's what killed the New York Mets season. If you choose to think that way, that's fine. I think you're thinking too much about it. Because the reality is he got hurt. Does it really matter how he got hurt? Again, injured list, 10 days. If the Mets place him on the IL, just to avoid any kind of panic, because that could happen. I mean, it's certainly possible that the Mets make an announcement, hey, Lindor's got blah, 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 whatever they diagnose it as, he's going on the injured list. That would mean he's eligible to come back for the last game of that series against Atlanta. I wouldn't sign for that, obviously, because that means he's missing 9 consecutive games. That means he's missing 9 very important games. And who knows what their record will be in those 9 games? Who knows where the Mets are going into the last game of the Atlanta series? But if he does go on the injured list, that's what we're looking at. Mike Caputo writes, look, I know it's panic city now with the uncertainty surrounding Lindor, but honestly, the team owes it to him to step up in his place. Right now, the pressure is on Pete Alonso. Unfortunately, this could be the end of the line for Pete on this team, which is arguably the most important stretch of games for him as a Met. Let's go, Pete. Hopefully, we're calling into the fan come November to say he needs to get his money because he carried the Mets to the playoffs on his back. We can dream. So again, it's weird with Pete. Pete Alonso has not gone like quiet necessarily. He just hasn't stepped up and had that stretch that this team desperately needs, this power stretch. But you look at the final game of this series, he had 2 important hits. But you're right. They need more. They're about to play 7 games at home against Washington and Philadelphia, and there's a damn good chance they're not going to have their best offensive player. You are 1,000% right that this is Pete's time. And in a lot of ways, Pete Alonso's future and really what a lot of us think about him, unfairly or fairly, may be determined by how he performs over the next 2 weeks. It's the final 2 weeks of not just a pennant race, but a pennant race in a contract year in which he has not had the best year, in a year in which they've been carried by one player, and that one player may not be there. You put that all together, I think our discussions on off-season Ricos and the tone of those discussions will be heavily, heavily impacted by what happens over the next 2 weeks. Michael writes, Realmuto versus McCann. Steve Cohen's first move as owner was signing James McCann over JT Realmuto. And for all those who read that one quote from a source close to Realmuto, from a Philadelphia reporter that was repeated, Tim Healy roundly debunked the story when he interviewed Realmuto 2 years ago during the World Series. And Realmuto stated he was waiting to hear back from Alderson and was surprised he never did. Meanwhile, Realmuto continues to torture the Mets. Report he's talking about is that Realmuto didn't want to play here, that he preferred to be in Philadelphia. He's friends with Bryce Harper, blah, 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 blah. Again, here's what I would say to you, Mike. You're not wrong. No one's going to argue with you that the Mets would have been better off signing JT Realmuto a few years ago over James McCann. But it is the middle of September of 2024 in a pennant race. What good does this do? I mean, look, if you want, I'll do this just for Michael. We will do an off-season Rico Brogna in which we talk about all the what-if moves the Mets should have made over the last 30 years. We could do hours on that. We could do nothing but Ricos about moves they should have made, or moves they didn't make, or moves they better make. But JT Realmuto getting the game-winning hit against the Mets in the middle of September in a life-or-death wild card race. We don't need to go back to 4 years ago to break down if they should have signed him or not. Of course they should have signed him. It was 1,000,000 years ago now. It really does feel like 1,000,000 years ago. So I don't get nuts about that. You can't get nuts about it. I can't get nuts about it right now. The right now for me is how can this team, over their final 13 games, have a better record than the Atlanta Braves? That's what I'm thinking about. How over these 13 games, in which the Mets schedule is a little bit more difficult, and the Mets have to go to Atlanta, which we know is a house of horrors, how can the Mets find a way, find any way whatsoever to make the playoffs? Jimmy writes, let's be honest with ourselves. It's been glaring at us for 2 years. This offense, for all the good it's supposed to be, isn't what David Stern should move forward with. I know there's season left to play. Heck, we still may be in a tie for a wild card spot as you read this. Well, we are. So you knew, Jimmy. But favor is not on our side. In the last few weeks, we should have taken a series from San Diego, swept Arizona, and really, we should have swept this series against the Phillies. They don't because, A, they love to break our hearts, and B, they are just an average team. Lindor made them above average for 3.5 months, but this lineup has shown time and time again it cannot pick him up. We can spend the offseason deciding how Stearns can rebuild this offense and possibly reinvent its philosophy like speed and contact versus power and strikeouts. But what else is there to say? The offense pisses away every stellar pitching performance the starters put up. They score runs in bunches and shut down the rest of the game, sometimes for multiple games. Pete hasn't done enough. Nimmo outside of June hasn't done nearly enough. And JD, while steady, hasn't done enough. Sure, we can still make the playoffs. We can be excited that Senga might come back, but that doesn't help us. The offense has been consistently inconsistent all year. They're going to shut down. This offense is not built for the postseason. Nevertheless, a postseason run. So you are right so far. You are right so far. Over the last few weeks during this stretch run that the Mets are in, their starting pitching has been chef's kiss awesome. Luis Severino, after that little rocky point in which we thought, maybe he's getting tired, Luis Severino's been great. Sean Manaea is throwing some of the best baseball of his career. David Peterson is throwing the best baseball of his career. And the bullpen, despite some rocky moments recently, has overall been really good. Their offense has come up small. It's come up small for, I would say, a good 3 weeks. It has to change. it has to change in the next 2 weeks. And if it doesn't, yes, our off-season discussions, much like I just said about Pete, our off-season discussions will be heavily based on how this offense performs over the next 2 weeks. They cannot continue to waste this really good starting pitching. If they do, yeah, we're going to be talking about a lot of changes. Absolutely. We're going to be talking about throwing all the money at Juan Soto, which we're going to do anyway. Doesn't even matter. They could score 1 million runs over the next 2 weeks. We'll be talking about that. But for the next 2 weeks, for these 3 games against Washington, the 4 games against Philly, and obviously that series against Atlanta, who knows what it looks like? Who knows what the standings look like when the Mets get there? They got to hit. Hitting needs to be their identity. Offense needs to be their identity. And yes, this core has disappointed a lot. It's a part of why I fear the Atlanta Braves. I fear going into that house of horrors and watching the Met lineup completely disappear for 27 innings. But if they're going to make the playoffs, which is still right in front of them, they are tied for a wild card spot. They play the team they're tied with in a week and a half. They got to hit. And I'll rank them based on importance. I'll do it right now. Number 1, Pete Alonso. Number 2, Brandon Nimmo. Number 3, J.D. Martinez. Number 4, Starling Marte. Number 5, Francisco Lindor. They got to hit. Now, 7 games. 3 against Washington, 4 against Philadelphia. By the way, credit to Pete Hoffman. You haven't heard a lot from him, but he had a very busy Sunday. He produced Giants football on the radio, then proceeded to wait for a train with the Giants, by the way, to come back to New York, but there were train delays. Then they finally got on a train. Then he was on a bus. Now he's in his car. So I'm not sure if Pete's able to talk right now as he has recorded this, Rico Brogna.
I just got home.
Oh, you got home? Look at you.
I just got home. And I walked my dog, too.
Wow. All right. I thought you were still on the bus. Anyhow, let me ask you this question because I want this out there before this homestand begins. 7 games, 3 against Washington, 4 against Philadelphia. What do they need to do? What will you be happy with over these 7 games?
Honestly, 7-0.
Come on, bro. Come on, bro.
You talk about you
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. I think your connection's cutting out. I don't know. I don't know if anyone else can hear you. I can't hear you. I'd love for them to go 7-0. They're not freaking going 7-0. I mean, if they go 6-1, you're going to be disappointed. Is that what you're saying? Of course, I'd love to see them go 7-0. To me, it's 5-2. That's the sweet spot. 5-2, and the formula is to sweep the Nationals if they've got the balls to do that and get a split against Philadelphia. I don't know what the hell happened there, but you know what? It's a sign that I'm ready to wrap up the Rico, so it's okay.
5-2. 5-2. That's what they got to do. 5-2.
All right. 5-2. Sweep the Nationals. And by the way, if you ask me right now, because there's a difference between what they need to do and what I think they're going to do, I think they're going to disappoint us. That's my gut feeling. Like, I don't think we're going to be thrilled from this homestand. And that's why, even though we're tied with Atlanta for that last wild card spot, I'll say this right now, and hopefully this is not words I'm going to regret. I'd sign for being 1 game out against Atlanta going into that series against the Braves. So I hope I'm wrong. I hope we're 3 games up on Atlanta. But again, 3 against Washington, 4 against Philadelphia. They have 1 more against LA with Yamamoto on the mound, 3 with Cincinnati, 3 with Miami. That's what the Atlanta Braves have coming up as we get set for this final stretch of the 2024 season. What a freaking disaster this has been. I'm sorry. And you know what the problem is? It's not losing 2 of 3 to Philadelphia. It's what's happened in the last 2 days. It's losing the way they did to Philadelphia, and then it's also losing Lindor. That's the issue. So it's not, hey, they couldn't look. Because I even said on Friday on the radio, I said, you know what? This may be a loser mentality. I'd be okay with just getting a game against the Phillies. I did say that. But the difference is, the reason why I'm not happy with it now is they blew 2 games, including a 4-run lead on Saturday, and they potentially have lost the MVP for an extended period of time or maybe a couple of days. So that's where winning a game became non-acceptable. Now, let me give you a little Rico schedule. The Mets play the Nationals on Monday. Our plan is to do a Rico after that game. The Mets play the Nationals on Tuesday. I'm going to that game. The plan is, without doubt, to do a drive-home Rico after that game. Game 3 of this series is on Wednesday. As always, a series recap, Rico Brogna. There will be no Rico on Thursday. That's going to be a crazy night. The Jets home opener, and the Mets open up the series against the Phillies. We will try to do a very late night Rico on Friday after game 1 of the series. A game 3 Rico on Saturday night, and then a series recapping. We're going to try to give you Rico Brognas basically every day until this regular season is over. The only day, as of now, where there will be no Rico is Thursday night, game 1 of the series. So we got a lot to talk about. Hopefully not a lot of pain. Hopefully a lot of excitement. Hopefully we can laugh at all the stress that we've had as we enter the home stretch of this pennant race. Again, subscribe, download Rico Brogna wherever you get your podcasts, and thank you very much for listening to another edition, a tense edition, a not happy edition of Rico Brogna.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Rico Brogna podcast. It's amazing, isn't it? Make sure you download it now to keep it on you at all times.